and chair. We do have, this is a special meeting, so our agenda is strictly focused on interviewing legal candidates for the board. Wayne Flowers has been on the board for, I don't know, long, 7 or 8 years.
11 years.
11 years. And he's decided to get off of the board, and I think he's going to do less work. So that he told us that I think in November, and since November we've been trying to beat the bushes and talk and figure out what we want to do. And so now we come to this point where we do have a quorum. We've got, I'm the chairman. Matt here is the vice chairman. We had elections last week. So and Carl is the treasurer. And then we've got, let's see, Jerry Scally, and Tom Leahy, and Larry Phillips, and even Matt. All of those guys have been on the board for 2, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, somewhere in that range. I've been on it 1 year and a few days. And
same
Janet,
with me, because we came in at the same time.
Yeah, Janet and I came in about the same time. Carol, you're the
Year and a half.
year and a half. Yeah. And then Carl's been on the board and off the board and on the board again, so he's the long service guy.
I was off for 7 years before I came back in 2018.
Yeah. So we have 9 board positions, but one of them's not been filled in long enough time, the way I understand it, that you have to get into the election cycle in October before you could fill it if somebody wanted to do it. Frankly, we had some resignations in September, and we dropped down to 4, which is not a quorum. And we had nominated Larry Pence at that time. And so the next meeting, first order of business was to swear him in. That gave us 5, because everybody else showed up. And then since then, we've added 3 more. So we're back into numbers-wise, we're in a lot better shape than we used to be. So,
You have my email by chance?
so we do have a
Which one?
quorum.
The agenda?
I'll reorganize.
Here, you want this one?
No, I need I left my email at home. I grabbed everything else, but I know what the questions are.
All right. So we call the meeting to order at 6:34. We've got a quorum. You know who all the people are. We normally have the Pledge of Allegiance, so we should do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let me go through these administrative announcements. Members of the audience, if you wish to speak or ask a question, you fill out the form. That tells you that here, and the form's on the back. Thank you. You give it to the secretary or chairman. We don't have a secretary, so you just bring it up here. The chair will address questions or comments after the agenda is complete, normally in the new business section, time permitting. Meetings normally last about 2 hours. Wait until the chairman recognizes you before you talk. Limit your comment or questions to 3 minutes unless the chair specifically extends your time. Where 2 or more represent or share common interest, only one will be designated to speak for a total of 5 minutes. For a good cause, the chairman may extend the time limit. Speakers are not allowed to assign his or her time or any part of their time to another speaker. A member of the public speaking on any matter shall confine him or herself to the question or matter before the board. Shall not be used unbecoming, abusive, or unparliamentary language, and shall avoid commenting on personalities or characters of any board member, former board trustees, other officials, staff, or the public. The board reserves the right to have the Clay County Sheriff's Department remove any individual or individuals who fail to meet this request. Address your question and comments only to the chairman and not to a specific trustee or individual in the meeting. Trustees can only respond to an individual if the chairman requests. A person who decides to appeal any decision made by the board with respect to any matter considered at the meeting is advised that the same person will need a record of the proceedings, and that accordingly the person may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, including the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. The district attorney, district accountant, and engineer advisory group may be requested by the chairman to speak at any time for advice, suggestions, or information. Questions can be submitted in advance by email to the district secretary at LAMSBD.com. I said we don't have a district secretary, but we still have that website, so we still are monitoring that and picking up those. To the trustees, all trustees, including board officers, must vote. A trustee with a conflict of interest regarding business before the board must declare that conflict with the chair before the vote. The district attorney may be consulted on this issue. If a trustee needs to leave early, the trustee needs to advise the chair. An important issue may need to be moved up for discussion earlier for approval and vote. Okay, so this is a special meeting, special board meeting, January 11th, 2022. Carl is going to facilitate the meeting. We had Wayne resign. We had a number of resignations, and in trying to fulfill all the requirements and things that we've had to do, I'd asked Carl to get involved in search for a secretary and also legal representation. So that's what's got us to where we are here tonight. Meeting agenda is we'll start. I'll let Carl handle that, and you can talk about what we're doing and
Okay.
move on with it. So Hans doesn't have to sit here for 3 hours. I just told him this meeting's
He's in
only
the
at
hot
2
seat,
hours. Yeah.
and I have more paperwork known to man through our house. And as Regina reminds me, I need a scoop shovel to get rid of stuff. I left one thing, but I know exactly what I need to say. Tonight, we're going to, first of all, this is Hans Cobb Gonzalez. I got that right. He's one of 2 attorneys who provided a proposal. Each board member, I think, received it twice, but recently. And one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure that I would ask 3 questions initially to set the pace for the board, and they would be both same questions for both attorneys. Then each trustee can either amplify one of those questions or add one of their own, etc. We'll go around, and we'll go around a second time if needed. My first question is that based on Wayne Flowers put together a legal ad and the requirements for the position. And my first question is, please define your experience with special districts. If none, please advise how your legal experience will benefit LAMSBD. Now, I know both of you prepared a proposal and you made a variety of remarks. This is your opportunity either to expand upon that and add to that. So again, my question is, please define your experience with special districts. If none, please advise how your experience will benefit LAMSBD.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for having me here. I consider it a great honor that I'm one of the 2 that you all brought in to interview, so I appreciate that. I look forward to it. I'm excited to be here. So my experience, I've never represented a special district. However, I've worked with them before in my line of work. So my line of work is I'm board certified by the Florida Bar in plan development law. And so that is, it could be anything that is a plan development. So it could be a CDD, which is a type of government, community development district, which is a type of government entity that is subject to the same type of laws that you all are as a special district. But it could be an HOA, it could be a condo, it could be a commercial district. And I have clients all over the state. And so my experiences in dealing with plan development has allowed me to work with special districts and work with a variety of governmental entities, whether it's the St. John's River Water Management District or various planning and zoning boards of Keystone Heights, City of Jacksonville, St. Johns County. So I have worked on the pre-development side, working with developers. So permitting issues, dealing with zoning type of issues. I have had to work with, various county, town, city inspectors and government offices, whether it's the property appraiser's office or tax collector's office, and getting documents filed and having to jump through the various hoops and all the procedural steps. So my experience isn't necessarily representing a governmental entity, but it's representing, I would say, quasi-governmental entities, because these plan developments are set up to be self-governing, and they operate under their own set of statutes which incorporate portions of the sunshine laws. So I'm familiar with having to operate within that type of environment where you have public, all meetings are open, business can't be done except for in an open forum, records that must be made available, and record retention and things like that. So I'm familiar with working in that type of environment. I haven't necessarily had a service benefit district as a client, but I don't see how I don't think that would be a major, issue for me, or would keep me from being able to represent you all to the best of my ability, because my experiences, I think, will carry over to this type of environment.
Okay, my next question is, again, leading with the legal ad that Wayne wrote, is that, again, define your experience with sunshine law and public records, which are major items with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, with my main practice area, the sunshine laws are basically codified into those statutes for my practice area. So, Chapter 720 is the Homeowners Association Act. Chapter 718 is the Condominium Act. CDDs, Community Development Districts, they are subject to the sunshine laws. The sunshine laws are specifically geared towards governmental entities. However, the plan developments that I represent, they basically take the sunshine laws and they just put them in their own set of statutes. So it's the same thing. So you can't discuss operations or business when you have a quorum present outside of an open meeting. You got to have you got to save all official records. You got to make them available for inspection. Properly noticed meetings, having people attend and have the right to record it or to ask questions. Those type of things. I deal with elections. Every community association has to have annual elections. They have periodic board meetings, and then they have their annual members meetings. So I get involved in all that. So it is the same type of environment as far as a set of statutes regulating the openness of operations of business. It's just within my own little practice area, but it's the same as what you all deal with as a special district. So I've been operating in that environment for years. I've been counseling my clients on that type of environment for years. On a daily basis, I'm assisting my boards because my clients are run by a board, and they have a licensed manager. So a big part of my day, or spread out to a week or to a month, involves counseling or guiding my clients on the same type of issues that arise under the sunshine laws.
My last question, again, relates back to the core of the legal ad that Wayne wrote, is please define your experience in public procurement, because that takes in a variety of areas, including the Competitive Contractors Act, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the next question. Please define your experience in public procurement.
Right. So, I think the same sort of description of my legal experience that I've used to answer the past couple questions applies to this, in the sense that I have experiences with it. It's just in my own practice area. So procuring bids for projects, the statutes that my clients typically operate under have that same type of requirement where you've got to bid out the projects. And obviously that involves maintaining the records and going through a vetting process. And so in addition to that, my firm, so I'm board certified in plan development law. There's 2 attorneys in my firm that are board certified in construction law. And so they deal on the contractor side, sort of on the other side of that. So I've seen both sides of it. So they deal with bid protest type of issues, any types of challenging to the bidding process. I've seen that side of it as well. So my experiences may not be exactly what, may not fall exactly into the bid procurement as you do as a governmental entity, but I have my own type of environment that I have to work within that is basically the same. It's just a different type of entity, like a plan development, a PUD, a community association, but they still deal with the same type of issues. It's just a different type of environment.
Okay, I've asked a few questions to get the ball rolling, relating back to what our requirements were. So Alton, your chairman, you're next on asking a question.
Yeah, and if this needs an example or something like that, then certainly let me know and I'll give you an example. But based on your knowledge from reviewing stuff on our website or any other sources you may have, what is your biggest concern that we should be working on, and how would you fit into that?
Well, so let me ask. So one question I did have in reviewing the website and the history is what is your involvement with the Lot Owners Association? Like, how closely do you have to work with them, or are there issues that arise in having to deal with that type of entity?
We have a totally harmonious relationship since they are a 50% owner of they have a quit claim deed. Is that what we have? A quit claim deed, and they in fact own 50% of the lake and dams and that sort of thing. Right. So
I just wasn't sure.
But it's not. See, they're not. Let me just say this: we're assessing taxes. It was $600 a month. And we had a referendum that was done in October.
A year.
I mean, $600 a year. Yeah, that'd be a lot, wouldn't it? In October, we had a referendum passed to do work on these dams in particular that would allow that rate to go up to, it doesn't say it has to, it could go up to $2,400 from the $600. Right. So that tells you that we've got some major issues with the dams and how they're controlled and that sort of thing. But the lake lot owners, they have certain maintenance that they do, mowing in certain areas. The boat ramps are concrete boat ramps. They maintain those. They have covenants that people building houses or making additions and things like that, they have to submit that to the lake lot owners board, and they rule on that. They do inspections and see that people are complying with that. They assess $50 a year for registration of boats and that sort of thing. Yeah. So essentially, that's kind of their function. Their only income is the $50 a year per lot, I think.
That's the correct assessment.
Is that? Look, we've got a small group. Kay is on the board for the lake lot owners. Janet's husband is the president of the lake lot owners. So I don't want to keep anybody from saying anything, as long as we keep it in a focused fashion and we're accomplishing something out of it. We still only have 45 minutes for this discussion. So but we do have I don't know how it's been in the past. I've heard, I mean, even this board hadn't got along worth of crap in the past, so I don't.
Well, I was just curious because that's really my environment, that's my practice area, you know, we're dealing with owners associations, and so I have them as clients. I
Yeah.
dealt with them as adversaries, so I have experience in dealing with them, and so that was really one of my main questions in reading about the history and how the you know, and how the structure of maintaining everything is divided up, was I just didn't know that, because it's unique, it's unique.
Major maintenance in dealing with St. John Water Management District and Florida Department of Environmental Protection, some damn safety people, is this group.
Yeah.
All right? So we're supposed to be maintaining the dams and the valves and drawdowns, and you know, we have the EAP for emergency preparedness in case we have leaks in the dam or whatever. We have 2 EAPs for when we have hurricanes coming. We have to drop the level in lakes, you know, and you have to drop them in sequence, that sort of thing. So, so we have more dealings with the state and with St. John Water Management District, and that's kind of where I was going. Is we've got to make improvements pretty quickly, and I thought you might have read the letter in February from DEP in the state that said you guys better get your act together, and we have since then. Okay.
I've seen similar letters sent to my clients from the district, St. John's Water Management District, regarding retention ponds and bulkheads and you know, things like that. So I have experience dealing with them on issues such as that.
Okay. That was primarily what I was getting at. Is I didn't want you to come in here. I thought if you had looked at the website, then you probably had picked out some things that you said, I wonder about that, or that will be something that might be not just as straightforward as.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, so in my world with the entities I typically represent, they do reserve studies every so often. You know, they'll have an engineer come out and provide an estimate on the current condition of whatever it is. Here, obviously, it would be the dams and whatnot, and you might get a expected life expectancy plus the cost, and that's how you would figure out, I guess, how to budget for that type of stuff. So, is that typically how you operate?
Well, I don't know that I said I've only been on here a year. We had some reports done, and quite frankly, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I do have an engineering degree, but I'm not a geotechnical guy. Yeah. But some of the stuff that's in the report that was done is not right.
I see.
And we've already shown some of that based on some of the things we've done. But it really created some excitement in the state, particularly because rating on the main dam was rated as unsatisfactory, which means imminent danger. I mean, as bad as you can get.
Right.
And we've challenged some of that, not as officially as we should have or plan to, but we've got to challenge that, because otherwise the state has threatened to tell you if you can't maintain these lakes to where it'll withstand a hurricane or a big storm, then we're going to tell you what you're going to do. You know, some of the statements have been they're going to take it over. They don't want to take it over. They're just going to tell you what, issue an executive order saying, boom, here you go. Have a nice day. But we have done things where we've repaired all the valves that are in the lakes, and so we do have control over that. We've got a maintenance system now, and we've done a lot, but we're not out of the woods. And on a longer term basis, these dams were built for 100-year floodplain, and now we don't know where we're going to be. We're going to have to make modifications. So is it going to put us up to 500 years? Is it going to put you up to maximum precipitation, or what the heck is it going to be? So there's going to be a lot more involvement with the St. John Water Management District and with DEP over the next year.
I see.
Probably this next year will be a lot of involvement with those people. And that's what I was getting at. I'm not saying, we can't sue the county, we can't sue the state, we don't plan on doing that, but we may need some legal intervention.
Right, some negotiating.
Yeah. And some advice to us too. We're community people, Shoot, where?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because that's why I love my practice area, doing what I do, because that's who I deal with. Those are my clients, are community people, whether it's within a CDD or within an HOA. I mean, it's just the people within the community, and the people who volunteer are doing it as a community service. You know, I mean, and I enjoy helping those type of people, and those make up my clients. So all my clients have a board, and that's who makes up the board, and so that's who I'm used to having to consult with and provide guidance to, and they come from all walks of life. Like you said you're an engineer. You know, it's funny. I'll have clients that, you know, it could be a high-rise condominium at the beach, and they have over $500,000 annual budget. And they come from all walks of life. I mean, one can be a teacher, one can be, just who knows? I mean, anything. And they have no idea how to operate a corporate entity that's in charge of basically real estate. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy helping those kind of people.
Okay, well, that's my question. I don't want to dominate.
I want to follow up one comment. If you ask, our charter reads as follows. Purpose and powers. The purpose and powers of the district shall be the continuing maintenance, improvement, and prevention of deterioration of the lakes known as Lake Asbury, South Lake Asbury, and Lake Ryan in Clay County. I can go into the long list, but basically, it gives you an idea. I think the original question, what do we do? This is what we do.
Right.
And so, Mr. Vice Chair, you're next.
So I have no doubt you'll be able to handle softball questions. My question is, say we ask you something that you're unable to give an off-the-cuff answer to. What's your process for answering such a question? Will you personally research it? Do you hand it off to a paralegal to look up? Or are you going to ask a partner in your firm? What's your process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. There's always questions that come in. I mean, I don't know that if you find an attorney that says, you know, either they know everything or they don't deal with having questions that they have to research, then they're probably not being honest with you. I mean, it happens all the time. You know, the process just depends on the issue. I mean, sometimes the answer can be found in an obscure statute, and so that could be just a paralegal. Hey, find me this statute that addresses this and let me know. Or it could be more complicated. It could involve the history of the area, or it could be involve whatever the documents are that deal with the issue. Permits, contracts with whoever. And so in that situation, maybe it's an associate that handles it, maybe it's myself that handles it. There's not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to legal issues or problems. What's important is knowing how to find the answer. Okay? And so if you have an understanding of how to find the answer, then depending on how complex it is, then determines who finds the answer. Whether it's a paralegal, whether it's an associate, whether it's myself. But I can tell you that with my clients, that as I previously described, is very similar to how it would be representing a municipal service district. And so I deal with day-to-day operational issues to very complex issues that may arise. I mean, I can tell you in my world, a lot of the complex issues that arise are, hey, we have this drainage system out here. Who's responsible for it? Okay, and so that involves looking through the governing documents that are recorded against the land versus, could be the plats that are recorded in the county, and then you figure out, okay, is this an owner issue? Is this the association issue? Is it a government issue, meaning is it the River Water Management District or some other government entity? And so those are typically the types of issues I deal with, and depending on the part of town, and whether it's a newer development with better documents or an older development from maybe the 60s or 70s where the documents aren't drafted as like as they are today. That's what I mean by what's important is knowing how to find the answer. Okay, and then because like, you pointed here, I mean, that could make things more complicated. The fact that, maybe some of the documents governing this area are, older and maybe not drafted as clearly as they should be. I don't know. I mean, I deal with these issues all the time, but that's really how I would go about it. And I try my best to respond to my clients within 48 hours. I mean, I may not have the answer because some answers are harder to find than others, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. You won't believe how many clients I get just because they come to me saying, I haven't heard from my attorney in a month. I call them, they don't call me back. I send them an email, they don't get back to me. So I want to build my business, right? I want to build my client base. So I try not to be that kind of attorney. So I try to respond within 48 hours with either the answer or at least letting you know, here's what we're working on. So I'm not leaving you hanging. So that's how I try to operate.
Thank you.
Carol?
We are, as you just heard, a fairly new board. And we come from so many different backgrounds that it's actually a fairly rich thing that we have going on, particularly now. But at the same time, we're working within a community that's very unhappy right now. Some of them are unhappy because past boards did not maintain the lakes as they should, but no one was any the smarter for the fact that it wasn't done, because if it had water and fish, the people were happy. Well, now they don't understand that part of that problem is that when we first moved here 20 some odd years ago, we paid $100 a year. Gosh, $100 a year. And then all of a sudden we had to dredge, and so that brought it up to $600 a year. But nobody went a little further and figured out that if it needed dredged once, it probably needed it on an ongoing basis. So they did nothing. Okay, so once again, we have unhappy people in the neighborhood. They look at the boards that have come and gone, and now they look at us without realizing that we are a brand new board. And we're dealing with all these accumulated issues and these attitudes that are coming at us right now. So one of the things that I see as most necessary in this environment is that whoever our attorney becomes is that they recognize that up front and that they guide us in a situational thing where they see all those things coming. Because if you come to our meetings, you'll hear a lot of irritation and a lot of almost in-house fighting. And I need an attorney that's going to step up to that plate and give us direction. And sometimes I've been told that the attorney, being our attorney, only answers to questions we ask. But I need a little more than that. I need somebody that's up to their elbows in the same problems that we're in. And if you see us going off the deep end, then you don't let us drown. You pluck us out and help us get back on track and help resolve that issue. Because in the coming year, if we do as a board what we should be doing, we're going to be looking at a lot of repairs and a lot of contracts, and there will be some people happy with it and some people unhappy, but we need to guide ourselves with some good direction from both Alton, other board members here, and you. That's what I need. That's what I'm looking for. And I think that as we move forward, our audience that come, which I'm glad they do come, but I think they're going to appreciate seeing that too, because we'll be having an outside experience come in to help guide us. So do you see yourself in that role?
Yeah, I'm actually in that role. And so here's what I mean by that is it's funny hearing you describe that. Not funny for the situation, it's just because that's what I deal with, that's my world. I can tell you right now, I have an HOA client that has a $650,000 repair project for a bulkhead, a large bulkhead, and also repairs to the clubhouse and the pool. And it's just because of what you described. Prior boards just kicked the can down the road. They didn't do anything. They come and go. No one's paying attention. Finally, you get some board members that come and they actually realize the situation, and it's got to fall on the shoulders of someone eventually. And it sounds like that might be the situation here. Now you're the board that's having to deal with maybe some of the things in the past that have led to where you're at today. That's my world. That's what I deal with. And I can give you example after example after example You know, I could go. There's probably not enough time for me to describe all the issues. I get emails and calls from property owners all the time about a scenario that you just described. You know, they're upset. They may not understand exactly what's going on. They think the board's not doing something right. The board's doing the best they can. They've inherited a situation that, you know, it's not one of their making, but now they have to deal with it. And so what you're talking about is an attorney that just answers questions versus one that can actually help you and guide you. The way I look at it is what you're saying is, you know, you can either be reactionary or proactive. You don't want someone that's just reactionary. Just, you know, you ask a question, you get an answer, and then you get a bill, right?
Yeah.
You want someone that's going to be able to see the issues and to understand that, you know, you may have only been on the board a couple months, maybe you're here a year, but these issues have a long decades history in the making. And you'll need guidance, legal guidance on how to navigate through that. That's my world. It's just within plan developments. You know, it's not so much with a governmental entity, but it's with these quasi-governmental entities. You know, whether it be a CDD or an HOA. But what you describe, I deal with all the time. I go to meetings all the time. Most of the meetings I'm at, there's police there.
Oh,
Because
we haven't gone there yet.
because people get out of hand. I mean, I represent communities that are thousands of lots, thousands of homes. I've represented some of the largest communities in Clay County, and I've been to some here that have had police presence, and it's just because of what you described. People they get very emotional because it's their property. It's where they live. They have disagreements on how to do things. And that's why being on the board of these type of entities, including this, is a great community service because a lot of people don't want to do it. And then when you do it, you realize how much work it is. And it's not a great way to win a popularity contest. But I go to these meetings all the time. People always think that people always think that I've got some kind of nefarious backdoor thing going on with my boards, and it's just because they don't trust what's going on. But that's the environment that I'm always in, and I'm used to it. And actually, I love it. I think it's fun.
It's a challenge. We also have another little nuance that we didn't mention to you. Not only are we, the lake lot owners and us, all own this in conjunction with each other, but we also have two houses on the other side of our dam, at the toe of our dam, that are basically on our dam, but it's their property. And
There's four.
Yeah, that's right. There's four. I'm thinking of the two major ones, but there are four. Two up higher and then two down lower. And they can really throw some things in there to be concerned with because we can't really control what they do and sometimes don't even know what they're doing. And our relationship hasn't been good with them. So I would ask you, I think that's a complication that you need to know about because it means that one day you may have to help us with that.
I'm assuming it's because, I could be wrong, I mean, there might be many reasons, but I'm assuming it's because those lots were pre-existing before a lot of the documents got recorded giving you the rights over the properties?
Actually, the dams were there and the county saw fit to allow those houses to be built there.
They were owned by the lake lot, by this group though, by the lake lot.
One was.
One?
of them.
one.
Yeah,
And we sold it, so we sold it.
yeah.
Created
Someone-
the farm.
The past board sold it to them.
The Baker property, was it not next to
But
us?
it was the county that rezoned it to
Yes.
residential.
Right.
County rezoned it to residential.
What we
The only
did,
one we sold was the one that ran to Black Creek.
right.
Donnie Wright.
Exactly.
But Baker next to him, who's dead, that was not our
No.
property.
So the reason I bring this up isn't to get an answer tonight. It is a complication that as we move forward and try to get grants and try to do work, we're constantly running into this stone wall of, we don't want it done that way, or we don't agree. Well, we're all suffering from the same end result if we don't do it, and that is the dams will fail and those people will wash down the creek with everything else. And that's a very harsh way of putting it, but it is a reality that whoever we go with is going to be dealing with, because next year this work has to begin.
And they've got to be dealt with
Nicely.
as part of the process
Yeah,
to be able to do it.
right.
According
We
to
have
St.
to.
John Water Management District.
Well,
And
and
the whole permitting process and all that, part of that is,
Them.
you know, you gotta make sure there's no eagles, bald eagles for one thing, but then you gotta make sure that those people are involved and are in agreement, come to an agreement.
the honest truth is, we need them to be involved. And there's been bad blood created because some people walked on their rights and other people didn't respect it, not on this board, but it happened. And now they can't get past it in many ways. And I understand, but at the same time, what we're trying to do is for the good of all, having nothing to do with anybody, no one person. So I just thought I'd give you that to think about.
Well, I guess my first thought is at least there is some common ground, because you all, at least at the very foundational aspect of it all, you have the same interest,
Yeah,
which is you don't,
staying alive.
Yeah, you don't want the dams to, you know, to be compromised, and then there'll be, you know, from whatever on the scale is of bad to worse, you don't want any of that to happen. So at least you all have a starting point, and
Right.
you know, I guess it just depends on then how difficult it is to work with them. Just depends on the personalities involved. But
There is an easement.
Yes.
yeah, on going over the property.
Hudson, is it my
Since you
turn for a
raised that
question?
question, that was my
Is it my
first
turn?
question. I've been asking this question for some time. We need to talk about this. One of the issues is, because we're talking, it's jurisdiction. The dams were built before permitting. Now in time, St. John's River Water Management will be hopefully permitting a spillway, etc., if that's what our CIP generates. But let's say the banks, because we have issues with bank loans, my head's full of all that. I'm not, from the standpoint, the timing of getting a loan, etc. If we are caught in a position where the banks are holding us up, and our vice chair brought up a very good point, can we self-finance? Self-financing brings a whole other issue to the table from our standpoint, bank loan, blah, blah, okay. What I'm gonna throw into the conversation is this. Time-wise, our $2,400, which it will be $2,400 at least the first couple of years, is that it doesn't start till November of next year. We start collecting. Let's say the banks, they want a bigger reserve or whatever, and we were thinking about doing some self-financing. Tom Hallquist is our accountant, and we look at those things. Let's say the time, I'm looking at time issues, it's extended. We have a question of safety, and we have a question of jurisdiction of those two properties. Now, I started conversations with Wayne, and we never, because the board, we never got to it. He referred to prospective rights as a potential solution. But the initial solution is a friendly conversation. Can we solve our problems? Is there a grant? If both homes, I talked before I was on the board, back on the board, I've been accused of talking to people in the past. That was when I was not on the board. FEMA has grants for properties in this situation if they own flood insurance. If they don't own flood insurance, the grant is not available. So here we are looking, if we get pushed out because we're trying to do a good job for our citizens in financing or not finance, self-financing, etc., and we may take another year, and we're pushing back projects which we can't get to it. the issue of dam safety versus a time issue, do you think is a prospective rights one way to go? Or, I mean, I'm maybe asking a question not ready to answer, but I see this board, they picked up on it, they started a question. We need to solve that issue. And if you're selected, you're going to be right involved in that and trying to find, if we can't have a friendly conversation and solve our problems, then we have to go to the second step. And that is prospective rights. I don't know that, because I understand you mentioned easement. I think there's an easement aspect of prospective rights. What little I know about law, I've learned law 101 50 years ago, so I don't remember all that. But I'm just throwing that at you right now. What she brought up is going to be an issue, and we need to get there. And if you're going to be our attorney, I see you involved in this in the next 12 months, deep, helping to solve problems. Someone said to me, why can't FEMA and St. John River Water Management, they kind of get together and go, how much money you want, and let's get rid of the problem. I don't know if that really solves the problem, because that brings in other arguments. So that's prospective rights. That's all I've heard from the background, where you have to force the issue to some degree.
Well, so where I would start with that issue is looking at the recorded documents governing the properties, all the lots involved. Could be district documents, could be lot owners association documents, to see what rights you have to be able to assess and to obtain the necessary funds. From there, hopefully you have options, but if not, or if the options aren't as good as you would like, I know with Duval County, because I've had this experience before with them, they have the ability to do a special tax assessment for a type of public project. Now, I haven't looked into that for Clay County, but I'm assuming they probably have some kind of mechanism to be able to maybe issue an ad valorem tax or something to the lots that are affected.
That's how we operate.
Yeah.
We levy a special assessment against the lots that are lake lot owners.
Do you do as a district?
Yes.
Does the lot association as well?
Yes.
No, they just have their $50 a year.
Well,
But that's against the lake lot owners as well.
Well, so I deal with these issues, the funding issues, for my clients, and that's how I go about it. Now, within the documents that give you those rights to special assess, that may give you the ability to
I don't want to interrupt you, but in other words, you have a lot of work to do if you're our attorney in that area.
Yeah,
And you're now aware of it.
Well, hey, here's what it is. To sum it up as concisely as I can, I've got to see what rights you guys have over the property to assess, and hopefully that gets you there. If not, we can look to the county. Or and I don't know, because I haven't looked at it, but I have to work with banks for my clients who need loans. I don't know if maybe I have relationships that would help you all out. I mean, whether you choose me or not, I mean, you can still reach out to me for my contacts, and I can see if they can help you out at all.
Okay. We need to roll on. I didn't want you to get really involved in it because you don't know totally the whole issue and you have to research it. So you're now aware of it. Janet, you're next.
Obviously, from all the information that my colleagues are pumping with you rather than asking you questions, it's obvious they're very much looking, as Carol said, for a team member. We are looking for a team member, not just, an attorney. Your resume was one of two that were a standout to us, so obviously you're sitting here. But can you tell me what you did to prepare for this interview today? and what you knew about us prior to walking in the door.
You know, so I'm born and raised in Clay County. I went to Orange Park High School, graduated there in '94, but I don't necessarily have a lot of experience in the Lake Asbury area. I mean, I've hung out here. My kids go to the Van Zandt Park. I live in Fleming Island. I used to live off Doctors Lake. My parents still live off of Kingsley. So I've grown up in Clay County. Now, in preparing for this, I read your website, read through the history. I just did my refresher on the sunshine laws, and it was in chapter 286 or 289. You know, those type of things, the type of just looking into the applicable either history or laws. But I'm a homegrown Clay County person, so with that.
And are you aware that we have county runoff issues that are literally filling in our fingers of our lake?
County runoff issues?
County wastewater runoff that are filling in our fingers of our lakes.
I was not aware of it.
Yeah, well, we are.
From the public roads, or
From all of the development, the public roads, the gas station, even mostly Seminole Village that brings in their septics right into our finger.
I'm asking about that.
no, I wasn't aware of that.
We're the teacup of Clay County. Basically, everything comes this way.
Yeah.
And the county so far has failed us miserably as far as taking responsibility for even cleaning out the cleanout boxes,
Yeah.
much less helping us with the dredging, which their lack of planning created.
We got
We got to move on.
5 minutes.
Jared.
Sorry.
I see you were a member of the Economic Development Council here at one time.
In the town of Orange Park, I was when I moved.
Were you council as a member?
I wasn't a council member. I wasn't an elected council member. I was a volunteer on the committee.
Do you bill differently for your paralegals, your junior attorneys?
Yeah, my paralegal, they, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, I think the rate that I agreed to, my rate would be $250, I think. I mean, typically, just so you all know, I mean, typically, like, if someone just hires me off the street, my rate is $325. But I think, I can't remember, I think the document I sent you was $250, so my fee would be $250. But I have associates that bill lower than that, you know, maybe $200, $225, depending on our associate. We have 3 or 4 associates, depending on their experience. My paralegal bill is at $160. So for any work that my paralegal does, any research or drafting, it would be her rate of $160.
My last question is, why do you think you're the best candidate for this job?
Well, I don't want to disrespect Mr. Scrubby at all. I'm not going to say that I'm the best. I mean, I would like to think I am, but I don't want to disrespect him at all. I know he was a county attorney for 20 plus years. I mean, look, I'm board certified, which means the Florida Bar considers me an expert in my field. So I'll just let that speak for itself. I mean, I think I'm a damn good attorney. I mean, I get the job done for my clients. You know, I don't want to say that I'm the best in the sense that I disrespect you know, the other person coming in, Dave, but I've never had anybody say they're unhappy with me. You know, I tend to think that I get really good results from my clients and that they're happy with me. I haven't heard otherwise. So I don't see why you all wouldn't be happy with me.
Tom?
Yeah, based on everything you've heard here tonight, so do you think you have the bandwidth to jump in and help us? You know, I think I see this, maybe I'm an alarmist, but I see this, you know, this has life and death matters associated with it. This is not an HOA arguing about the color of the tulips.
Right.
We've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, no, I have, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have the ability, the bandwidth to be able to.
So you're going to be at every meeting?
Sure, yeah. You know, I do my best to always be there for my clients. I will have clients that call me on Monday and they say, hey, we had this meeting on Thursday that's gotten out of hand, can you come? And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. So, if you can give me more notice than 3 days, I'll be there. I'll put it on my calendar. I think you all have monthly meetings. is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, just I'll put it on my calendar and I'll be here. I live about 15 minutes away. My office is off of JTB, around the South Point area, but I live 15 minutes away from here.
And are you open to remoting in if we try it, Zoom or
Yeah,
Teams?
I have been forced, well, let me just say, I'm fine with technology, but just the environment of the past, going on 2 years now, I've been forced to be a pro at it. I mean, I do hearings now, I do evidentiary hearings, believe it or not, via Zoom, which is challenging in and of itself. So yeah, I mean, there's absolutely, I mean, I attend, I would say, just so you all know, I would say on average, I mean, there might be 2 weeks where I don't, and then a week where I have 2 or 3, but on average, I attend a public meeting once a week. It's usually for, my community association clients, but I'm doing it once a week. And for a year and a half, it was all done via Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Now, some, it's just whatever they want to do. Some I do in person, some that I'm still doing via Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I did an evidentiary hearing through the court last week on Zoom. So I'm completely comfortable with that. If that's,
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I apologize.
No.
How long is the I'm not familiar at all with the Sunshine Law. I moved here 5 years ago from Virginia, never heard of Sunshine Law.
Yeah.
Why is this so important? I mean, I understand people have, it's all open meeting and everything like that, but it sounds like to me it's gotten to where you almost have to have a lawyer to hold a meeting. I don't get it.
Well, I don't think it's the sunshine laws that make it seem like you have to have a lawyer to have a meeting. I think that maybe that's just the way society is going, unfortunately. But the sunshine laws, I mean, it's a great purpose and intent, and that's just for everything to be done open. You all cannot meet, and I know you all know this, but just to answer your question, I mean, you all cannot meet at the gas station and start talking about business and getting stuff done, because whether you know it or not, you now just had a closed, non-noticed, non-open to the public meeting, and that's prohibited by Florida statutes. And so you can't. So the point is just, it's good intentions. It can cause things to move more slowly. Okay, but I think it's better than the alternative, where stuff might be done in the dark, nobody knows what's going on, you just gotta trust what's going on in the back room. The point is you just have open meetings, people they have the right to come, they have the right to ask questions, all meetings have to be noticed, the documents relative to your operations have to be kept and made available and open, and if someone makes a request for them, you have to give it to them. So the point is just to have that trust level between the public and the government. It can cause...
But 35 years ago, when the whole country replaced honesty with politically correct,
Right.
is that it? Okay.
Well, I mean, that may cause where we're at today.
Honesty to politically correct.
But I think the sunshine laws have been around for close to 100 years.
All right, how much experience do you have
I mean, they've been
sunshine laws like with battling with the counties, because we have dam issues and problems like that, but the runoff is caused from all of these, the overflow from the drainage ditches and so on and so forth. And I don't know this to be true, but I was told by previous board members that they had the county out here. They looked at them, one particular one at Seminole Village, where that drain runs down. They got the county to come in and throw sandbags down. I've already investigated that. They're washing away and eroding the road, but it's like no one has the power to get the county to do anything for us.
Well, so I
Is
don't
that
know.
true or not?
Well, I think it depends on how much of a problem you cause. And what I mean by problem is not necessarily, I don't mean that in a bad connotation. I just mean, what is the saying, the squeaky wheel gets greased, or whatever the saying is? I mean, I think and I don't know what the history's been. I mean, maybe you all feel like you've done this. But I think the bigger pain in the butt you are for the county, the more they will address your concerns so that you're no longer a pain in the butt.
Okay.
That's true.
Okay.
And I don't mind being a pain in the butt.
Well, time is up, and everybody's asked their questions, I think, best we could, and I want to thank you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you all. Do you want me to stay, or am I?
No,
I can go. I just didn't want to leave if you all were looking there.
Thank you sir. We appreciate your time.
Are we not allowed to ask the attorney any questions?
No.
Okay, never mind, Carol.
You can ask questions later with the board.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
I'm right behind you.
I won't shake anybody's hands if it's comfortable with you shaking their hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Matt. Appreciate
Yep.
it. Thank you. Nice to meet everybody.
So, I think you can talk to them. I don't have a report, but I'm gonna call.
7:33, pausing.
Mark, Alvin Davis. Please meet you.
Hi, how are you? Good, I'm Carol Weisenberger.
Hi, Matt Foran. Nice to meet you.
Janet Wandage usually is sitting here, she'll be out in a moment.
Tom Leahy and Larry Pence.
Since you introduced you.
Mark, I'm gonna start off asking 3 questions.
Gotta go, you gotta go.
Referring back to the, search for attorney. To begin the conversation where you included information in your proposal on this, but you may want to expand on it, so. Okay, please define your experience in special districts. If none, please advise on your legal experience as benefit arrangement.
Well, as you probably know, I served, this will be my 40th year as an attorney, and I served 30 of those as county attorney for Clay County, so general counsel basically. Had a lot of experience in special districts doing that. Created special districts. Before I got there, which was in 1986, the county had adopted an ordinance that created what the predecessor to this entity, and then apparently took it to Chancellor Vaughn, who was the legislator for this district, and she brought it to the legislature, and they created a special act, enacted a special act in 1986. So I was right there when that happened. We created a dependent district to operate the water and wastewater utilities that we acquired, 20 years ago probably. The county decided that it was time to purchase the 3 largest investor-owned water and wastewater systems: Kingsley Service, Mid-Clay, and Clay Utilities. And I think Mid-Clay was right out near Running Dancing Park, I believe. I guess it's that way. So we created by ordinance special district to operate utility assets because we really didn't know anything about how to do that. So we did, appointed people to serve on that board, but after a time, they wanted to be independent. So we worked on legislation that we took to the legislature. They enacted a special act creating the Clay County Utility Authority. We call ours the Clay County Water and Sewer Authority, but we eventually dissolved that. I've had dealings with the Lake Asbury LAMSBD many, many times. And that's inevitable in my experience with Clay County. And I've read the charter for various reasons many times. Was actually involved in a request to the Attorney General's opinion for opinion about how the members of the Board of Trustees are appointed when no one qualifies to serve in the seat. And the answer to that is that whoever was in that seat is still, it's like your tag, you're it until somebody qualifies to run in your seat. And most recently, I worked with a team to prepare, to submit an application for the creation of a community development district. That's a Chapter 190 entity, so that's not really the same. And if you look throughout the Special District Act, they're very clear that community development districts are not considered special districts in that sense. I mean, they are, but they're not really governed by Chapter 189 rules. Instead, they're governed by 190. And they're really just a mechanism for improvements and raising revenue to do infrastructure for developments, building roads, stormwater, amenities, recreation, security, and things like that. And so they levy assessments that are collected using the tax bill method. And that's how the residents pay for the infrastructure that is required for the development. Eagle Harbor did it, Fleming Plantation has done it, and a lot of the new development that's taking place up in the northern part of the Brandonfield master plan area, they're doing it too. So it's very commonly done, but that's not a 189 district. I noticed on the district's website, there's a statement that says that we are an independent special district. Do you all believe that's true?
No, not entirely.
It's not at all. So by definition, you're a dependent special district. And that's because your budget can be vetoed by the county commission. You have to submit you have to submit your budget to the county commission. Mm-hmm. And then by statute, by definition,
that's right.
in the definition sections here, 189.012 says a dependent special district means a special district that meets at least one of the following criteria: A, B, C, D. D is the district has a budget that requires approval through an affirmative vote or can be vetoed by the governing body of a single county or a single municipality. So in the charter, you're required to submit your budget annually to the county commission.
Right.
And if they don't act on it within 30 days, then it's deemed approved. But if they do, they can disapprove it. They never have.
No.
That's, so by definition, you're dependent. I also looked at the DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunities website. They are responsible for managing all this stuff. You understand, special districts popped up all over the state and have been active for years on all kinds of activities: mosquito control, fire, and stuff you're doing, canal maintenance, all sorts of special districts. But what they discovered was that nobody was watching what was going on. So they came up with this idea of creating, categorizing special districts for what they are, and then establishing reporting requirements, which is largely what this does. This requires a great deal of reporting, not just, for example, any changes to your governing charter, or I'm trying to think of some of the things. Well, you have to provide your audit to the county. You have to notify either the state or the county about your meetings, your meeting schedule. So there's probably 2 or 3 dozen things that you have to do as a special district. And I may have that wrong, but I know that there's a requirement that
We don't have a requirement for the state, but we have a requirement for the county.
For the county, it could be either the state or the county, that you notify them as to when your meetings are. So the Department of Economic Opportunity is a state agency that was tasked to, used to be called Department of Community Affairs. And they were a big agency that that oversaw comprehensive planning as well as emergency management, things like that, and grants for community projects, CBDP stuff, Florida Forever, stuff like that. So that was actually Florida Forever. But DEO then has a list that they compile. You can go online, I just did it, and they've got you listed as a dependent special district. So
They actually listed as what?
they have Lake Asbury Municipal Service Benefit District is listed as a dependent special district.
That's interesting because everything we've heard today, we were independent. Number two, your definition then implies to me most special districts are dependent.
Only if they meet one of those four criteria that are in the definition. And the only one that fit for you was the one about your budget. But if you if you meet any one of those four items, you are by definition a dependent district.
That's
What does that mean? Then you have to follow the dependent district rules that are set out in 189.
So why did they use independent?
Now, the DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, did not identify you as independent. They've got you as dependent. I only mention this, and I don't want to really digress too much, but I only mention this because, I reacquainted myself with 189. And I also went to your website because I wanted to get some background and some more information. And right on the front page, it says that Lake Asbury LAMSBD is an independent special district.
Correct.
And I just wanted to make a point to you that whoever is going to be doing this job needs to kind of take a look to see, okay, what stuff have you been doing in terms of your reporting and compliance with the dependent rules, just to kind of audit how that's being done to make sure that you're in compliance.
Well, you raise a good question because I go back and trying to remember, we've always been, again, classified as independent. But I see what you're saying about the reporting aspect, because I look at 189, it goes over my head at the time, but when I look at it, I saw some things and I didn't understand, but we were always told we're independent. Matter of fact, we report as independent. I did not catch where we were classified by DEO as dependent, so I will.
Well, like I said just before I came in,
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and check that. So,
I wrote the
here's the
verbiage.
Lake Asbury front page.
I wrote the website because the verbiage I came from the source at the time that we were independent, and we've heard in meetings several times that we were independent. But I also listened to you what you said about the reporting. I find that intriguing. Anyway, so when I'm not.
Well, here's from the special district list that DEO contains. Lake Asbury's right there. It's got your registered agent, Mr. Alpha Davis.
Yes.
Your registered agent has your address and phone number and so forth, and your website.
Well, they published that there, didn't they?
You're on the hot seat now.
It says your status is active, which is good to know that they think that you're active, but then it says your classification is dependent.
That's a typo because I sent the information as independent and added his name because they gave me heck because we did not have a chairman. I said, we don't have a chairman, only acting. And here comes Jack Gaskins whizzing right back at me and said, well, sorry, you got to give us a name. So there went Alton, but I put down independent on the original application, renewal application to him based on my prior knowledge.
And it's good to do. They read the charter
in my book.
and found it and said that because
Okay.
they also have authority to identify your classification.
Oh yeah, I know that.
And if there's any question about that, you can ask them for a declaratory
I
statement.
will do that tomorrow, email it to Jack.
We're not, even though we had a tax referendum which passed, we're not capable of collecting taxes. We're dependent upon the county
We can,
to collect those taxes.
In terms of, you mean putting, okay, so you're talking about ad valorem taxes?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you coordinate with the property appraiser gives you the range that fits Lake Asbury, fits your district, okay, and then he gives you a roll, a tentative roll, that tells you what the values are, and then you then set a tentative millage rate based on what your budget requires.
And we're dependent upon them to collect the taxes.
But that's true for any municipality in the county, that's true for the county, the school district, the water management district. All the taxing authorities have to go through the same process. They receive from the property appraiser a tentative roll back in May or June or something like that.
in June.
And then that gives you the value that you're going to be taxing, gives you the taxable value that's certified to you tentatively. Then you take your millage rate and you take your budget and you say, okay, we've got this revenue coming in, that revenue coming in, and that revenue, and we need, and this is the expense side of our budget, so this is our delta, and we got to levy that. So you adopt a tentative millage rate, you have your public hearings, and then you adopt the resolutions levying the rate, establishing the millage rate. Then you certify that to the tax collector, and the tax collector puts it on the tax bill and extends the, so the term of art is extends the roll, and then puts that on the tax bill, and then you get a check from the tax collector every month during the collection season. So you don't have to worry about collecting the taxes, they're collected by the tax collector.
Our charter says we can assess up to 3 mills. We only approved 1 mill by referendum back in 1986. And every year since we approved the $600 back in 2010, we do a resolution every year, we're not going to collect the ad valorem. The ad valorem is based on $77,290,000, which was June 2021 value for the 3 lakes, $77,290,000. But we don't collect that because we agreed with the populace that we would only collect the assessment rather than.
And, it makes sense to me because usually your ad valorem is used to close the gap, okay? So every time, if you look at my familiarity with the county, you have money coming in from every a lot of it is restricted revenue. It can only be used for certain things. So it goes into a specified fund so it doesn't get mixed up with something else. So that the restrictions that are like gas tax can only be used for certain expenses. It can't be used for general revenue. The local option sales tax, okay, that can only be used for certain things. You can't use it to pay firefighters, for example. So you have all this money that comes from different sources, and you build a budget based on that. And then at the end of the day, in the case of the county, the manager is the budget officer. The budget officer goes around and says, okay, what are you going to need this year? What are you going to need this year? Sends out an inquiry on a form to everybody, all the department heads. Tell me what money you need, how many more people you need, what can you live with? Then he goes around and beats on everybody, right? And gets their numbers down, gets all the constitutional officers' requests in, can't really touch them, puts them all together, smushes them all together, looks at the revenue coming in and says, okay, I need this much more. And that becomes the ad valorem burden. And the ad valorem burden is then calculated to a tentative millage rate. So again, since you don't do that, you really don't have to concern yourself with it. So with the special assessment, you're required to use 197.3632, which I've done many times have I done that over many years. In fact, I wrote a manual that my old county attorney's office used to update that roll every year. We had solid waste collection, we had solid waste disposal. We had several that were for road maintenance, one for paving. We did Blue Jay, which is out in Clay Hill, which is a big sprawling subdivision, large lots, acre plus lots. 1.5 miles, 2 miles of fine road, and a lot of dirt roads off of it. So we levied an assessment there to pave the spine road and then to maintain, because they were private. So we had to acquire title to them. It was quite an undertaking. So we've done that. Many times that we've used that. So I've taken the special assessment program and created, you do a resolution of intent, it's got to be done by December 31st, preceded by 4 weeks of published notice, you have a public hearing, and that's where you say, we're intending to do this coming up next year for the next tax bill. Then the following year, you enter into agreements with the tax collector and property appraiser, where you're going to reimburse them for any costs they incur and provide you the information you need, which they never do. They never do. They always just give it to you. Then the enabling resolutions, the initial assessment resolution, the creation of the assessment roll, the mailing of the notices that have to go out, the preparation of those notices, the publication of the notice, the final assessment resolution, certification of the roll, done all that. So it's a bit of a code of practice, if you will, but I think there's some nuance to it. And I had a good teacher, Bob Neighbors, an attorney out of Tallahassee, who is like the guru of home rule in the state of Florida. Neighbors, Goodman, and Nickerson. So his team taught me how to do that. You had 3 questions for me. One of them had.
Well, I'm going to combine the next one. The next one is, again, referring back to the basis of selecting an attorney, is define your experience in sunshine, public records, and public procurement. Can you talk?
Well, I gave primers, I gave instruction to new commissioners. We always had a new commissioner day where everybody would come in and say, this is what we do, the department heads would come in and talk. And I always had a presentation about sunshine law and public records law. And the many conferences, CLE, continuing legal education, and how many of those involve public records issues. It's bread and butter to me. I always had on my desktop, my computer desktop, the electronic version of the government and the Attorney General's Government and the Sunshine Manual. And I encourage each of you to go ahead and download it. It's exceptionally well written. I know the woman that was the originator of it and the longtime editor of it. And Pat Gleason, she was an assistant attorney general. She went all over the state teaching people and giving lectures and seminars. And I'd spoken with her about my issues on a number of occasions, very knowledgeable. So I have her manual on my desktop, and you can just click on it, open it up, and search for whatever you're looking for. It's well indexed, has a logical table of contents, and I would just encourage you to go to do that, and you can almost find just about anything that you need to find on public records. I've had to instruct staff, I remember writing a memo to staff, admonishing them not to be resistant about public records requests. I've found in my career that people, you've got just rank and file people, good people that are working hard, that are trying to do their jobs, but they're not necessarily steeped in these maybe a little arcane rules about transparency. The Sunshine Law and Public Records Law is all about transparency. It's what makes us credible. Okay? The more transparent we are, the more people can see what we're doing, the less likely you are to have people question what you're doing. They may disagree with what you're doing, but your service is going to be appreciated for being open and above board. So I'm a big advocate for this transparency business. And I can recall having to write memos through the county manager to whip everybody into shape so that they wouldn't put up any resistance to public records requests. Why do you need to know that? You need to put that in writing. You need to come back tomorrow. Those kinds of things, okay? And I would have to say to them, hey, look, that record doesn't belong to you. That belongs to whoever that public person is. And they have every right to come in and look at it. And you're just the trustee. You're just responsible for making sure that when they want to see it, that they get to see it. So I'm a big advocate for that. And like I said, it's been bread and butter, both Sunshine and public records. And I have some, I'll probably, if you guys think you want me to assist you with this, I'll probably do some in-service for you on Sunshine, just to make sure we're all squared away about the nuances for Sunshine. And also for public meetings. It's not just Sunshine, it's where you meet, how you meet, how you communicate, and you don't communicate. Okay? Can't exchange emails. Here's the rule. If it's a matter that is either pending or reasonably likely to be pending before you as a governmental body, elected or appointed, then you can't talk about it. But you can talk about the weather, you can talk about kids, you can talk about stinking Jaguars, you can talk about whatever you want, church, whatever. But if it's a matter that's either pending or likely, reasonably likely to become pending before you, then you can't talk about it. So, for example, if a constituent comes up to you and says, I want to talk to you about a problem I'm having here, and I want you all to take that up, okay? You just have to say, look, boo, here's my number, call me. We can't talk about this together. And they'll appreciate that. They'll understand that, okay? So, Sunshine Law, okay, procurement.
Does that mean that individually they can talk to that person?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Okay.
You can talk, remember, the First Amendment, all the things that are in the First Amendment that we normally think about. Well, there's one in there that we don't normally think too much about, and that is the right to seek redress. That's in the First Amendment, okay? So it's a constitutional right to approach government and seek redress of a grievance. So you can't deny people that, but it just has to be done in a proper way. So absolutely, if somebody comes in, calls you up, or sees you taking a walk or something, say, I got beef with you. Come over here and look at this. You can talk to them all day long, okay? But, if Carl shows up and says, what are y'all talking about? Then that's the end of that conversation.
And two board members, if they're talking about something that is a pending matter or likely to become a pending matter, then two board members aren't even supposed to be talking about it.
No, but there are ways to deal with that, okay? You can publish a notice that says that trustee A and trustee B are going to have a public meeting to discuss the following topic. And you do it. And there are ways to do that. So, we can accommodate lots of things as long as we do it transparently. Okay. That's just off the top.
We didn't give you the benefit of backgrounds of people a little bit. That might clarify things a little bit. We have, myself, I've been on this board for 1 year and progressed from a trustee all the way to the darn chairman some way or another. And I'm glad I'm here, and I'm not glad I'm here, if you want to know what I mean. And then you got Matt, who's the vice chairman. We just had our elections, and Matt's been on the board about 3 months. Okay. Janet's been on it about a year. Carol, you said a year and a half?
Year and a half.
All right, and then Larry's been on it 4 months. Tom and Jerry both have been on it about 2 months.
So did you all have recent elections for this?
We had recent elections, but also we had resignations to the point where we got down to 4 board members.
I know that because I was looking at your website. I was concerned about that. So you have 9 trustees.
Right, we got 8 now.
We have 8 now. Okay,
Yeah,
so
nice.
but they all qualified and probably weren't opposed, so they were elected in that way. Okay, that's good. That's good. So I'm glad to hear that.
It had to go to the commissioners.
Well, you can only get commissioners involved if there's a vacancy. A vacancy happens midterm. A vacancy does not happen because you decide I'm not going to run again. If you decide you're not going to run again, you're still it until somebody qualifies and is elected to take over your term. This runs the same as the county commissioners.
But you can resign at any time, though, right?
You can resign, but you're not off the. Well, if you resign, you create a vacancy then.
Well,
If you resign, you create.
If you read our website, then you know we had a massive shakeup in the middle of September, where the chairman resigned, another board member resigned, and the secretary resigned, and then since then we've had the Wayne Flowers resign, but he's still.
Was it just they were tired of the deal, or?
I don't want
Well,
to comment.
anyway, let me just say this. I admire what you do. After 30 years of working with elected officials and appointed officials, there's no glory in it. I know that. And there's just no glory in it. You only get to hear everybody's gripes. Maybe on a blue moon, somebody calls and says, what a great job you're doing. Okay? You're called out at, in the middle of dinner or in the middle of your kid's recital or whatever you're called. Somebody wants an answer to a question. They expect that answer. So my hat's off to you for doing it. It's thankless.
Well, and really, this leads into my question, right?
Well, I'm not finished yet.
Well, I thought you answered all of them. You asked
He
me.
has procurement. He wants to talk to me about it.
Before, he left me out. I was on the board for 4 years, he was off 7 years, back on the board 3 years.
So you were glutton for punishment.
Yes.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Last question was
Let him
just define your experience in public procurement.
Okay. The county has a procurement office. The county does. And it's evolved over the years. When I first came to Clay County, there was a kind of a rudimentary procurement manual. In those days, the clerk of the circuit court was the clerk of the board, and also the custodian of funds and the pre-auditor. So you had to do everything you did as a county had to run through the clerk's office. Took all the minutes and everything. Now that function has now been restored to the clerk by amendment to the Florida Constitution. But the county had broken away from that for several years under this charter form of government and had the county manager serve as the clerk of the board, as the custodian of funds, and as the pre-auditor. So now the clerk's got all that back again. So, but back when I first came in, George Carlisle, does anybody know who George Carlisle was? No. So George Carlisle was the clerk of the circuit court and had been for many, many years. actually the entry to the vestibule for the courthouse is the car lot. Anyway, so he managed all that procurement stuff. And there was a manual that they had a CPA developed for that. Well, eventually, when we took over procurement, we updated that manual. And, our procurements, just think about the stuff that we procure, buildings, road improvements. We paved many of the roads in Lake Asbury, and I say we, the county, I didn't do it. Many of the roads in Lake Asbury were paved, they were dirt roads. When Tom Ryan and Florida Title, when they first developed it, they were all dirt roads. I don't know, maybe Lake Asbury, maybe the one with the dam was paved, but I think we did that too.
It wasn't paved.
I think we did that, and we put in the guardrails, which made me very nervous that we were driving, guardrails into the top of that dam. So, I've done quite a bit of procurement work. The important thing about procurement is to make sure that whatever your procurement rules are, that some are governed by statute and some are governed by your local policy. Whatever those rules are, that you follow them, and that you follow them faithfully. I wrote the bid protest policy that the county uses today, which requires really an administrative law type practice. It happens that people dispute the award of a bid, so you give notice of your intent after you've made your decision, whatever the services. If you're hiring engineering services, for example, or some of the professional services, you have to go through a separate statute called the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. That's chapter 287 of 55. It's very, very specific about how you do it. The point of it is you're not supposed to low bid. Okay, for example, your engineer, right? Like they did for the Apollo program, they low bid all that and sent those guys up to the moon and low bid stuff. But so you follow those rules. And you issue a notice of intent to award the bid. That gives everybody a chance to question, to file a protest if they disagree with the decision that you've made. And then if they file a protest, then you have to wade through that and have a hearing and resolve it. It's a fact dispute. It's a lawyering thing. It's a lawyering thing. You have witnesses, you have a hearing officer, and you have a decision that's made, and it's subject to review in the courts. So I wrote this policy, and I actually made it into a specimen, and then I gave a presentation about 2 years ago to the Florida Association of County Attorneys on procurement, covering a whole variety of topics, but I included the specimen bid protest resolution policy. So I know that you have professionals that you engage to do work for you, and then you also have contractors that have to do various things for you. And I know that you are dealing right now with some real deferred maintenance issues on the dams, as I've read a little bit of the reports and stuff. So I know that you have your hands full, and I don't envy that. So, nobody really knows what is at the core of those dams. I know it's we've never really got an answer to that. But how do you find out without digging? Who wants to dig? So, okay, so that's, you asked me about
You got it.
sunshine, public records.
So now it's Walt's turn. Now, ultimately, not will.
This, what you're talking about kind of ties into it, you know. My question was based on your knowledge from reviewing our website or other resources that, you know, you've had a lot of experience with. What would be the biggest thing that you picked up on that concerns you that we ought to be looking at, and how would you be involved in that?
I don't know what you all have as a plan. And your mission by charter is the maintenance of the 3 lakes and the dams. That's your job, okay? There are federal and state agencies that have oversight, and they require periodic reports. So we gotta have engineers come out and deal with that. And you know you have deficits that you're gonna have to deal with. And we're dealing with huge public safety issues when we're talking about these dams. They stand at the bottom of Lake Asbury, you know, down at the creek. So you know, and we all know how important that is. So I don't know what plan you all have developed, but I'm sure you have. But it's gotta be budget driven. So, you know, the first step is to find out what do we have, okay? What standard do we need it to be conformed to, okay? And then what are the remedial steps to do that? And what's that gonna cost? And then, you know, just public outreach, we can, you know, every step of the way, inform the public as best you can as to what you're doing, because they're gonna pay for it. They're all gonna pay for it. It's the lake lot owners that are gonna pay for it, right? Okay. But I don't like deferring maintenance. And I know you don't like it either. I know that there are political considerations that have to be accounted for here. But, you know, when I read the reports, I was concerned. I was very concerned that something needs to be done. Now, I don't want to be the 10th trustee. Did any of you ever see me as county attorney or were aware of my role as county attorney? Anyone? Okay. So, even as a young county attorney, I started at 28 years old, way too young to take on that responsibility. But as time went by, Larry Lancaster, does anybody remember Larry?
Yeah.
Okay, Larry was a dear friend. This was his district, Lancaster. And he used to call me the 6th commissioner. So I didn't think I was, but I did inject myself sometimes into their discussions when I probably should have my mouth shut. I'm older and wiser now, and I don't want to be the 10th trustee making those decisions. I'll do whatever I can to give you the legal underpinnings of where you can go, how you can get it done. But in terms of the hard decisions you have to make, I don't want to be in that role. But I encourage you to bite the bullet, do what's got to be done.
Yeah. Well, where we're at, and I'll make these comments, not, and certainly is trying to draw more of an answer out of you. I'm not trying to make comments for my own benefit, but where we're at, we passed a referendum where we can increase the taxes from $600 a year assessment up to not two, but up to $2,400 a year. That gets us a little over $1 million a year from 250,000 roughly.
All the way to 2,400.
Up to.
Up to 2,400.
We haven't gone there yet, but we
I
can,
have
yeah.
their authorization.
Yes.
We voted the
Voter approval to go
Voter?
to, yes, $2,400
Per lot. Yes,
per year.
yes.
Good for you.
well,
You needed that.
I mean, everybody's not happy. It certainly wasn't a landslide vote
You
either.
had to have that,
But that's where we're at. And
How
in the
is your
mean,
education going?
How's what?
How is it going with educating people so that they understand that they're on the hook for this because it's their problem, not just your problem?
Hit and miss.
I think it passed, so it was successful.
everybody, I'll tell you what I think. I think people were afraid based on the publicity that the dams are gonna disappear. I mean, the dam's gonna get washed out, or the state's gonna tell you to drop a level, and you ain't gonna have any lakes anymore. So I think the fear factor is what got the approval.
Well, whatever it takes, because
I mean, but it got approved. Now you're into the, what do we really gotta do? The short-term thing that we've done is, if you looked at the website, you saw a February letter from DEP, Tracy Wood, dam safety officer, and there were meetings associated with that I was involved in. And, at that time, we had valves that didn't even work on these lakes. Since then, we've repaired all of the valves, so all valves work. And we've got a maintenance guy that's doing, every month he's maintaining the valves, greasing them, opening them, closing them, that sort of thing.
your spillway, is that okay? Has that been fixed?
The spillway, which one?
The main one?
The main one on Lake Ashby, on the south, the one that goes into Black Creek?
Yes.
That is, the same as it's been. It's a foot above normal water level, so it really doesn't function that
I
much.
seem to recall there being an issue with it having some erosion, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Where we're at now is we don't have a district engineer. We did away with that. And we've got an advisory group that's made up of 2 people that were district engineers for the board at one time. The maintenance guy that's doing the work on the valves. Who's
Was John Mahoney was your engineer? Was John Mahoney your engineer?
He was until September.
So are you determined not to have a staff engineer?
We were determined not to have them. Actually, they resigned as the staff engineer, and then we voted to not have them do additional engineering work for us, which they wanted to do. So, you asked that question. You want to make any more comments about John Mahoney? Or?
Oh, no, John is a dear friend. I went to first grade with him all the way through 12th grade. So I know John. I'm not pitching for him.
Okay.
Not at all pitching for him. If he didn't do a first class job for you here, it's on him, not on me.
Yeah, okay. Well, I didn't know where you were going with that.
They had different figures every
As you can tell, yours truly was the reason more so than anybody else that he ain't here doing work for us anymore. So
You've got, that is, if I'd been here, listen, I had to run John out of the meeting one time because he was where he shouldn't be. So I don't have any issues with that, but he is a dear friend.
and that's fine.
But
That's fine.
personal, not professional. It's got nothing to do with it.
Well, the one thing that, and I shouldn't say this because this is getting off track, but I'm going to say it anyway, is when they wrote their letter of resignation, they sent a 5-page letter to the Tracy Wood, the dam safety officer, and Cammie Dewey, the St. John Water Management District that heads up our permitting and all that, and said, by the way, we're resigning from the LAMSBD group because of 5 pages of bullshit, and a lot of it was some of it was right, a lot of it was wrong. And I talked to them personally about that and said, why did you do that? They said, well, we had to tell them that we quit. I said, so you couldn't have done what you just did with me and tell them that you quit? But you put 5 pages of crap in there? So, you can find that on the website too, their letter of resignation. I think you can, I'm not sure.
So what, on the scale, is it a 5-point scale? What's the current rating of the dams?
Well, it's not on a 5-point scale anymore. It's on a satisfactory, unsatisfactory, good, and poor. So it's a 4-point. And the North Dam, the Lake Ashbury Dam that you're talking about, goes into Black Creek, was rated unsatisfactory, but we've discredited a lot of the reasoning that was rated that way. Those dams were built to a 100-year flood, and the guy that did the rating said that one of the reasons he rated it as unsatisfactory is because it wouldn't withstand a 500-year flood. Well, hell, it never was designed to do that, and we've done nothing to make it do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as a facilitator, we need to move on with questions.
Yeah, I'm getting wound up, so we need to back off. Sorry about that. But just that should give you a little flavor of some of, here we sit with a new board, and we've got a referendum that passed, we've got an advisory group that's formed, and we're trying to figure out what are we gonna do, and how much money we're gonna have coming in, and how to prioritize and stuff. And we may need help with DEP and St. John Water Management District that our new legal source may be able to at least guide us a little bit, not necessarily go negotiate for us, but
you all are lay people, you're not professionals.
that's why we formed the advisory group, but that's not gonna be, I don't think that's gonna be once we hire this advisory group, is gathering information. They report to me, and they're gathering information, and then we'll do the RFQ, request for qualifications with engineers.
Oh, so you will go back?
Yeah, that's what we're working on now.
Okay, thank God. I was gonna say, I don't know how you're gonna do that.
I was going to wait to see how long you were going to sit there quietly before you lost it there.
That's why I'm looking at all these wonderful people that don't know anything.
No, and
about
that's,
dams. And how are you gonna, good, so yes, we'll go out for an engineer,
Right.
and get a qualified person, good.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Matt, you're next.
So my original question's been answered, but I did want you to repeat, please. What was the name of the manual for public records that the Assistant Attorney General wrote? You mentioned that earlier.
It's called the Government in the Sunshine Manual, and if you go to the Attorney General's website, it's prominently, I mean, you have to be trying to miss it. It's out there. They put that right in front. And it's a PDF you can download, and I used to do that every year.
Okay, thank you.
It's very searchable. And there's all kinds of stuff, like can you meet remotely? Can you meet outside of your district? Can you do it by Zoom? All those kinds of things. Which the answer is no. Unless somebody's sick and they can't attend. Anyway, so there's a lot of answers to questions that come up.
Thank you.
Stuff that happens.
Carol.
As I'm sitting here listening, clearly you've had 30 years plus some in county governments and direction and so on. And you know that we are lay people, and we do have a huge job ahead of us. And we need someone, I know you don't want to be a 6th or a 5th or a 9th or whatever, but we still have to have a working relationship with this person as we go forward, because we've got too much in our faces not to have it. And that's a big commitment on your part, and our ability to come to you without reservation when we know we have to. And I don't want to feel put off by all your knowledge and your history and your background, because that's pretty much what we need. But we have to have somebody that's going to dig in and work with us.
I wouldn't have expected to be engaged as a senior counsel with Rogers Towers and do less than that.
No,
I would never imagine doing that. When Carl asked me if I would consider putting this in, I gave it a lot of thought. And I care an awful lot about the safety of this community. Many times. So yes, I'm all in, if that's what you mean.
One of the things that we maybe not brought forward to you, but there's an awful lot of the Lake Asbury problems have to do with work that the county did and didn't do. That's caused us to be a sieve for all the runoff water in the world with all the crap that comes with that.
And you might have to blame me for some of that.
I do. And one of my question then becomes, we're going to have to turn around and get the county to help us undo some of the damage they've done. Not just now, but in the future. Is there any conflict for you in all of that?
You asked that question, and you and I were talking.
That's a good question.
I don't think there is.
I don't know that I can imagine the exact conflict that may come up about that. What I can't do is I can't use information that I gained as county attorney to the disadvantage of the county in representing you. I can't do that. Okay, and I have to, as soon as that came up, I have to say, I'm sorry, I have a conflict and I can't
do that.
waived. And we'll have to get somebody else to assist with that issue. I mean, that's the only
Well,
way.
that seemed logical to me, what you just said, and that's why I asked the question, because if we were paying you, then not only would we be paying you, but we'd also be paying someone else to do what, and honestly, I understand why you couldn't do it, but it's still for us who are now being judged very closely on every penny we spend. I don't think that the people in Lake Asbury would be real happy with us if we did it. They would love the fact that you represented us well, but they wouldn't be happy to see us paying yet someone else.
You know, I'd have to remember, I'd have to go back and dredge up. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Recollections about issues. And I know that when Henley was widened, there was some real problems with the upper part of the lake.
Correct.
The fingers, the really narrow part of that end of the lake with sedimentation and so forth. And I know that the county came in and dredged it.
No, it didn't. Sorry.
Did the county participate in any way?
The agreement was the county was to pay,
But they did
but they
not
never
pay.
did.
No, they didn't do it.
Did I negotiate that agreement?
We're not sure of that, but we were not going to talk
I
about
don't think the
that
time
one.
frame
If you
fits.
did, you did a damn good job.
And we did a bad job of not making them pay. But you see, things like that are going to come up because not only have we got that one, we have the finger that he lives on, and it's a total disaster.
No,
And then there's mine, which is also a disaster, and that's a direct result of the county's failure to do the work they said they were going to do. In fact, we practically had to fall in a bridge or in a culvert before they ever got out there to fix it. Can you tell I'm a little excited about this?
I haven't been there for 5 years, okay?
Yeah, I know. But that's the kind of thing that we're going
I
to be dealing
understand.
with.
No, I'm not being glib about it.
Are you referring to Bush Court? The settlement issue on Bush Court?
I just don't
Because the
know.
county was supposed to dredge, and we wound up paying for it.
Bush Court is fine.
Well,
Bush Court is fine.
I remember that there was a dispute involving the county,
Yes.
and I was on one side. Okay?
Yes.
And whether that was with the LAMSBD or whether that was with the Lake Lot Owners Association, I don't recall now.
But I do recall Bush Court, and we wound up paying for it.
Somebody
That
yes.
issue, maybe another issue.
And years ago, before all of us, there was some litigation about a drainage problem way up to the west.
Mm-hmm.
That's him.
Yeah.
And I'm walking up there with Larry
there's-
Lancaster, walking all over that property, because somebody had done some kind of development and had cleared it off, and silt stuff was coming down into Lark, maybe, or I can't remember which one it was.
No,
It was,
that sounded like Hazelwood Hole.
and there was some kind of litigation over that Claude Mullis was involved in, and I don't even remember.
It was really messed. It was somebody built something that looked like a little pool out there, and it
That's
collapsed. Right. And then the county came out and looked at it, and they said we didn't do that. And then we said, yeah, but all that drainage coming from Seminole Village is coming there and making it worse. But it never got resolved. So what I did learn the other night at the planning meeting, because they said, oh, it doesn't look like the county was very nice to Lake Asbury. And I agree, they weren't. But one of the things we're all learning, everybody in this group is learning, is that you become the squeaky wheel if you want anything done. You have to go, you have to show up, and you have to voice your problem.
Repeatedly.
You may not want me to do this because, you know, the county did do quite a bit of stuff in Lake Asbury in terms of road paving.
Yes, they did do that.
For many years, the whole subdivision was unpaved.
Was dirt.
Now it's paved. There was no plan made because of the way it was designed back in the 60s. There was no plan made for dealing with runoff.
No.
And the runoff was happening long before the drainage was done, before the paving was done. All of that runoff was happening because people had to bring more loads of dirt to stabilize the roads, or lime rock or clay, whatever they were bringing out. And the county was responsible for the maintenance, I believe. I think all the roads were dedicated, except for Simmons Trail and another road that was,
Waller Way.
yes, that's right.
They're
And
still.
so, you know, the county had the responsibility to maintain those roads, and they kept bringing loads of dirt because it would wash out and go right down into the lakes. Okay, and so it was sort of an inherited problem that, yes, we're maintaining the roads, but this is what we inherited when we undertook to maintain these roads. But we didn't buy taking care of the lakes and the runoff. We just...
But you're using it for the runoff. So that's the
anyway,
history.
that's why I want you to understand.
Yeah, I got it.
This was how I reasoned it back in those days. I reasoned it this way, that this was what the county inherited. The county didn't inherit the lakes, and that's the way the roads were built, were to drain downhill and inevitably into the lakes. So, you know, I told Larry, I said, I can't see, I mean, if you guys want to do it, get yourself your 5 boats or your 3 boats. But I'm not in agreement that you have to do it. I'm not in agreement that you can make a case for liability against the county. So that's why I say it's more of a political question than it is a legal question, right? So I just want to be very candid with you about how, you know, my history with Lake Asbury and that whole thing that had to do with Henley, the widening of Henley Road. There was, your engineer was all involved with concerns with some feature of, we had to capture the stormwater and retain it to do that. When we widened the road, we had to deal with runoff. And he was concerned, I guess, with inevitably what you do when you build retention is you stage it up to the 100-year or the 25-year, whatever the standard is. And then you have a pop-off. It's got to go somewhere. So you have a weir, a flume, some kind of a concrete structure that allows the water to release. Because after 25-year storm, all bets are off. Everybody's on their own. That's kind of the theory. You just can't design to, if you tried to design to a 100-year storm for every single project you ever did, you wouldn't get anything done.
Sort of like us trying to get 500 year.
Okay, so I say that to say I can't think of a specific controversy. I can just tell you how my mind worked at the time. Once the county paved all those roads, and it took time to do that, much of the siltation problem was controlled. It wasn't completely eliminated, but it was much more controlled because obviously you have sealed in all of that loose material that was going down into the lakes.
But now everybody else's stuff is drawing into our lakes with all the trash that goes with it.
What,
Like all of these little communities that they're building, it all flows in
how does it do that?
by the drainage, the way it's set up.
Even Winn-Dixie, when they built their place up there, listening to the engineer, said that it's all programmed to the lowest
Right.
point, which obviously the lowest point is actually Black Creek, but they utilize Lake Asbury as a retention pond.
And where does it come over the road?
It's a retention pond, that they just rebuilt that, and remember this past year, was it June, July, August, we had an acceptable amount of rain,
Yeah.
and it overflowed, and we got more trash during those 3 months from running out of the retention pond across the road and right dead into the North Lake.
Well, maybe we need to try to negotiate with the county building a pond to capture this water.
To clean it before it gets to us.
Is there a place for that?
I don't know.
Is there a place we could run the water to?
I don't know.
Does it come from, does it focus to a point, or is it kind of coming in from?
It's coming in from everywhere.
Everywhere. Seminole Village drops in on us, across the river, and it comes across to us. It just, whatever they're building around us ultimately comes to us.
Oh, what possibilities? I mean, if you're not going to get the county to do it, if they're not going to be agreeable to do it, would be to ask them to create an MSBD, a municipal service benefit unit. And that would be the greater Lake Asbury, this side of Henley, because that's where the lakes are. And then address that. But you'd have to levy an assessment on everybody in the community. They hate that. But then you would be dealing, it would be a drainage
Assessment.
Yes, and let's get our terminology right. Don't call the assessment a tax, because if you do, it's a confusing thing for people. A tax is, we'll have that discussion another day, but an assessment is specifically for some improvement. A tax is more of a general revenue. And they arise out of the same power, but they have different function. So I say that, I'm not admonishing you, I'm just saying that it helps you with your constituents
Yes.
if you use the right terminology, because they're going to come and say, well, I pay a tax. No, you don't, you pay an assessment.
So you'd say gas tax is a misnomer?
No, gas tax is a tax.
That's a tax.
It's not a general, I say that, an ad valorem tax is a general revenue.
Okay.
Which can be used for any government purpose. As long as it serves a public purpose, a general revenue can be used for anything. But once you're into an assessment, it can only be used for the service or the improvement that's
Okay.
funded.
Thank you.
Can we move on, Janet?
Yes, sir. Obviously, you're a superstar amongst attorneys, and we appreciate your time
That's a
here.
superpower.
It definitely seems that way. We are wrestling with a lot of problems. Obviously, the dam situation, unsatisfactory, high hazard. I'm diligently working to get us some grants. We have this wastewater problem, the septic systems from Seminole Village coming in, filling up our fingers. And some of the wastewater is coming into our lake so fast, it's creating holes on private property where small children can fall in and get hurt. This is all documented. I've talked to the county commissioners. There are just innumerable problems. Some of the biggest we're facing right now are 4 properties that have been permitted and allowed to build homes on the dam years ago. Those Those properties, yes, sir. Those properties, one of them actually owns our spillway. And so we have to get them to agree to permit to put in any kind of siphon system or anything like that. These are such real challenges for us. I was denied a grant because we don't have full and complete ownership of the dams because of the private property owners. So, I mean, so given all of these issues that we have, why do you want this job?
It's a lawyer's job. It's a lawyer's job. It's what I know.
He dreams about stuff.
No, I don't exactly dream about it, but it's what I know probably better than anything else.
I mean, this is truly more challenges than most legal jobs. You know, because we do have that life and death balance that we're hanging in right now.
As long as you understand that my job will be to provide you with legal counsel and legal services, then it's just another legal job for me. But I have a passion for it because I know this community. And, you know, this was a favorite place for Larry Lancaster and for Ronnie Robinson. These two, this was blood to them. And so I learned a lot from them about, you know, I'm another guy that had Simmons Trail. Rodney was furious with me because I told him that Simmons Trail was not a dedicated road on the plat. And I arrived at that because of legal principles. I didn't just dream it up. It was my conclusion that the Simmons Trail was not a dedicated right-of-way on the plats. Instead, it was like a horse trail, I think is what the original contemplation was.
Yep.
And I remember talking to one of the Ryans about it. Hazel's still kicking.
Yeah, she is.
She's a bird. She's something else. Anyway, so I came up with I just said, look, I don't think it's a dedicated right of way. But he had the county commission go ahead and accept it for maintenance, and they've undertaken to maintain the Simmons Trail now. But it was really, what was happening was that every lot that had Simmons Trail behind it had another road as frontage. So it was pretty clear that what was intended by Simmons Trail was that this was kind of a ranchette community, and people would have their animals and maybe ride, and that's what Simmons Trail was about. But as time went by, people started cutting out the rear part of their property and selling it to a third party, and they would have to use Simmons Trail to get in and out. So over time, it evolved into a situation where that was their only way in and out. They couldn't go across the guy that was the grantor to get out to the main road. So Simmons Trail became the only way they could deal with that. So I've had my dealings with Lake Asbury issues over the years. So it's not like an alien place to me. And of course, the Lake Asbury master plan. I represent people who don't have Lake Asbury, but within the master plan area, and work with them on their entitlements. So I don't know whether that's a sore subject for any of you all.
It has issues, well, like Lake Lark, they're trying to.
I don't know Lake Lark. I know it's going with Lake Lark. See, I thought Tom had either given that or sold that to the Methodist Church, and they were using it. Lark stood for the Lake Asbury Retreat Center, right?
They filed for bankruptcy and it's for sale right now.
The Methodist Church?
There's a whole drama.
Methodist Church sold it to
Team effort.
Team effort.
And that affects our dam integrity too, so there's
I know, it's right above there. I've been on the property before.
But they're plotting a new subdivision, which is going to increase traffic by X%, and all that traffic is in the middle of these dams.
I can't help you with that, because that's not your jurisdiction. You guys are dam and lake people, and you can't get involved with those politics.
Well,
But you can, I mean, personally you can.
you can,
Well, I
because
have
that
to
like
object,
Mark
because
breaks
that,
your,
we have to protect our dam.
That's true, that's true.
There is some intertwined.
There is some connection. Yes, sir.
Let's move on to questions, Jerry. All the questions I want to ask have been answered. Tom?
Well, the only question I have is, you obviously are involved in a very large and successful law firm and career. And are you going to be able to attend all of our meetings and stay involved, or will you delegate within your organization?
I've already talked to the chair of our practice group and told him what Carl had asked me to do, and like I said, I spent some time discerning with. And yes, this would become a client, and it would be entitled to the time that it needs to be, that it has to have its issues addressed, just like any other client. But I'll tell you otherwise. If it becomes a problem, I'll tell you otherwise, but that's not my anticipation. Certainly not my anticipation. I'm not thinking that the kinds of issues that you're going to be presenting me with are things that I'm going to have to reinvent the wheel on. Okay, I've probably seen versions of these problems, so it wouldn't be my first rodeo. Plus, I know more about the community than the average lawyer probably does.
Okay.
Larry? No question. Any more questions from the board?
No, I think one comment I would make though is, I was on Lake Ashbury Drive in '87 when the roads weren't paved, and the North Dam was lime rock primarily with potholes out there, and it was graded periodically, and I was there when the road paving took place and all of that. And most people, except the ones that had horses that like to ride on the dirt roads, were extremely happy when that paving job took place.
When we did that paving, that was Jimmy Weeks. Remember, anybody know Jimmy Weeks?
Yeah.
Long time public works director. So he went out there and did that paving. I remember that. Okay. And the next thing we know, people are zipping across it. They used to go cautiously across that.
They had to tear their car.
All of a sudden, people are zipping across that dam, and you got over here 100 feet, and over here you got the lake. So Jimmy came back and said, "Hey, what about guardrails?" Maybe somebody in the community said, "Hey, we got a safety problem now." So eventually they did put them in, but I was scared to death about putting in those guardrails. And I said at the time, we're in a kind of an unusual situation because there's a lot of law that's kind of up in the air, that's not written in any kind of in cases per se, but that basically say that if you're government, you cannot use public resources to benefit private property. You can't do it. Okay? And we've had people get in trouble over that. It happens. People will get in trouble using public resources to benefit private property.
That's where we're at with the dams.
Okay, but that's what I said. I said, tell me who owns that dam. Who owns it? So there was a question about ownership of the dam, and I was concerned that we were going to catch ourselves in a situation where we were using public resources for private property. Plus, I was terrified that they were going to go in with those pile drivers and drive those into the top of the dam, and God knows what impact it would have on the stability of the dam. But we did. We put the guardrails in, and that was.
Is that right here on this dam?
No, it's on the other one.
North Lake.
It's North Lake.
The north dam?
Yeah. Just on the lake.
The south dam has guardrails, but it's a good thing because I live on the corner house on the other side, And just about every weekend, we have drag racing crosses, so.
Exactly right, and there's no lights there, so at night,
It's really hard.
you come zipping across the dam, and let's say you've had a spoonful, somebody's gonna be dead, so.
Well, we
you're
just
doing
had a
drag racing.
Corvette go in the pond up here at the end of 209 in Henley.
Well, see, I resolved that issue just because I said, look, somebody's gonna die, and then we're all gonna be looking at each other saying, how could we let that happen?
Your second recommendation for the guardrails on Lake Asbury was thrown out of the budget twice before I got off the board the first time.
So, so I have some history. So,
Well, I was trying to make a compliment to you that the paving was a good deal back in 1991 or something.
like I said, we did all that. Is there anything left out there that hasn't been paved?
Yes,
Other than Simmons?
Simmons and
Yeah, it's a couple.
And Hazelwood.
Phelps,
and Hazelwood, some of that.
Phelps, I don't think is,
You know, a lot of
Phelps
those were done
is
this
not
way.
paved, I
I
don't
don't
think.
think so.
A lot of them were done this way. But I still shake my head to think about how this was done. Public Works people would go around door to door, and the county commissioners basically said, we'll do a match with you, okay? We will do the lime rock and, you know, the road prep, because you gotta have the road. Public Works cannot do that, and then you all pay for the paving using our in-place asphalt bid. An in-place asphalt bid is just, we would go out every year and get a number and say, okay, for placing a yard of asphalt, give us a price. Right? And so you'd have a minimum order, but was our price for getting the contractor to come out and lay asphalt. So they went around and collected money from the residents that were on that road, $1,000 or whatever it was, back when it was still possible to pave a road for $50,000. And they'd collect that $50,000 and they would receipt it over to the finance director. And then they would order up the paving and go out there and shoot the elevations and put the line rock down and pave the road. That's how a lot of them are done. We call that joint participation. Joint participation program.
I think we need to shut it off. But one thing you said earlier, the municipal service benefit unit idea for the basin is phenomenal.
Well, I don't know that that's, you would have to have a forensic study done to find out where all that crap's coming from. And then you'd have to find out, is there a place where you could effectively attenuate that? You know, where? You know, this problem of houses on the dams. Do you not, I don't recall, you don't have the power of eminent domain, do you? So that may be something to be addressed.
Well, the board voted 2018, early 2000, I just came back on the board and the board voted, I voted no, to never use eminent domain on the dam. Of course, that can be reversed, but that was a vote by the board.
But is that one of your powers?
Pardon?
Is that one of your powers in your charter?
No, it's not. No, it's not. To my knowledge, it isn't, but your attorney of your expertise probably could find a little niche.
Well, isn't this also complicated by the fact that there's 50% ownership between the lot owners and us?
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Who owns the dam? Is that ever been resolved?
It's 50% according to that article. It's
A
on
quitclaim
the-
deed,
it's on the
they
history.
issued a quitclaim deed in 1991.
Lake Lot Owners Association and MSBD are
That's on the website.
50% owners.
That may be how we managed to do the pavings. That's right, because the MSBD became part owner and that became the public purpose then.
That's in the history part of it. The quitclaim deed's on there.
I know that's true, yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the county does claim to own the roadways that go over the dam.
Well.
They have stated that in an open meeting, that's video recorded.
Well, And I can tell you who said that too. No. When a county government, there's a statute, 95.361, says that, understand that throughout the state of Florida, you have 100 years before the modern era of roads being built and used. Some of them were plank roads, some of them were like Bellamy Road was hacked out of the swamp and connected St. Augustine to Pensacola and was built in the latter part of the 18th century. And you can still see it out there, elements of that road. So, in fact, in the early part of the 20th century, there was no county commission. They were referred to as road commissioners, county road commissioners, because that's what their job was to manage the roads. They didn't deal with fire and rescue and, planning and zoning and all that. That's all they did was deal with the roads. So, the people built roads all over the place, and in fact, it was not uncommon for someone to call their county commissioner and say, "Hey, I got a piece of property I need to get to. Can you send the crew out to clear a road for me?" I'm talking a long time ago, not during my watch. Okay? So a lot of these roads were built just piddly without any kind of engineering or anything. So that as time went by, and some of these roads became more and more important for people to use, the legislature came up with a statute that said that if you built a road as a county and then maintained it for 4 years, or a city, then it was deemed dedicated, and you could have it surveyed and record a map in the public records, and then you had title to, as an easement basically, to that road. And I suspect that's how Lake Asbury Drive was claimed, as a county-built road. And that has been liberalized, that statute, so that now instead of having constructed it, and sometimes it was unclear, you're talking about a road that might have existed for 90 years. Who knows who built it, right? So they liberalized it so that if you maintained it for the 4-year period, then you could claim it as a public road. Of necessity, there was just no other way to deal with that, so that these old roads could be brought up to modern standards, for public safety reasons. So I suspect that the county, that the county claims Lake Asbury Drive over the dam.
They said that in an open meeting that was recorded.
They say.
They have a book, by the way, that has all of the public roads and all the private roads.
And their lawyer concurred with them in that open
Courtney.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Even though they claim to own it, they haven't bothered to repair it since you paved it.
They're waiting.
Over the dam. Have you been there?
They fill the potholes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Looks like there's been parts of that that's been repaved.
Yeah, when was that? That had to be.
That was around 1990, early 90s.
Yeah, almost 30 years now.
Yeah, I was there, and I built in 87, it was dirt, and then I left in 96. So it's somewhere between 87 and 96.
They haven't put a new course down on top of this.
You go look, go drive on it, it's a disaster.
Well, I would like to take a walk with you, see some of these things. I mean, it's better for me to see them.
Absolutely.
Can you do that without it being a sunshine law violation?
I can meet with anybody anytime.
And that, but we can't all go on the same trip.
As facilitator, I'm calling. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming.
Nice to meet you, thank you.
I live there. I live in Lake Asbury.
Thank you. Hope you appreciate all your time.
Roger Mayor, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for out here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Yes, we do. Appreciate it. Thank you, Will.
We all have a heart for sure. And,
I respect that, and I told you, I made a point of saying how, what kind of art it has to take in the face of all the crap you have to take as a public service. It's your fault.
gotta keep the eye on the ball.
It's
We
your
know where
fault.
our true north is.
I respect that, so. Y'all have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, Alton, you're now in charge as chairman of the review and.
Do we have public comment?
Yeah, we got that.
That's not part of this.
So what we've done is completed interviews with two candidates, the only two candidates, quite frankly, that we got. Quite a variation in them, quite a variation in several things. Price and price that they charge for one thing, but then in the experience levels, you got the old gray-haired guy and you got the young whippersnapper.
And personalities are complete opposites.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll have a little discussion and then we'll have a vote. I think, do we pick one or the other?
That's the plan. Yeah.
That's the plan. A vote by show of hands. And, obviously, if we can go back, we'll have Carl go back to whichever one we select and try to negotiate a better deal, but that's not, from what I've read from both these characters,
They're not gonna come down with
I don't know
price.
that that's gonna be.
May I comment? When I went through the process with several of the people, basically, I contacted 40 attorneys. But one thing that jumped out at me in talking to Steve Lewis, Long and Walker, basically said to me, you can't afford this. I got the impression when I would go to a law firm and said, please review blah, 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 and said, we'll get back to you. They would never get back to me because they would look at our financial budget and everything else. They could read, they all figured out what Lane was charging and said he's not charging enough. So, yeah, I can go back and talk to whoever we select, but the point is, I don't think they're gonna move too much, especially from my standpoint, from Mr. Struby, the experience he brings. There's a lot of work here, there's a lot of work for the new attorney, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Here's where I'm struggling in my mind, is Mr. Scrooby is obviously a superstar, but if he hits a wall where he can't represent us, we're gonna have to fork out even more money, even though he's already on the payroll. On the flip side of that, Hans, what is his last name, Waller?
Hans Wall.
Wall, okay. Hans Wall, we may be paying for him to learn, because, he's, but the difference between the two of them is what, $50,000 or $36,000 a year? That's a lot of money.
It's $80 a lot per year.
So I'm wrestling in my mind very hard right now.
What I noticed was that he has so much experience in history, he digressed to the point where we were completely off the topic in a few minutes.
Oh, that was purposeful on his part, because
Well,
he
I know
didn't want to
that.
point blank answer the question.
He works with one of the largest, oldest law firms in the
Yes.
state. Politically correct.
Very.
But is he
And
going to
he did
become,
say
is he
that
going
he
to,
had people in the master plan. That would be Larry Skinner, the Skinner family. Obviously, Reinhold is involved in this.
Lancaster.
And if we talked about separating that side of the road out from this side of the road, as far as this runoff stuff, that will be an issue.
Yes.
And believe me, I know who he's gonna side with, not us. That's a conflict of interest. He also had a conflict of interest with stuff he did with the county. He knows more about what they did with the runoff on the slate than he can admit.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That came across
He's gonna
that.
have conflicts of interest, and he made it very clear he's not gonna be the 10th commissioner, so he's gonna do this standoff kind of.
And I very much like Mr. Waller's answer to Carol's question, where she asked, you know, are you basically going to be a team player? And he's a lot more personable in that respect. So I don't know. I mean,
I thought both of them were very personable. I have no issue with any of that. Clearly, you're right. This guy's head is full of knowledge about how all this came about. But I don't think that he can represent us effectively. I see him having to put a lot of stuff over here in somebody else's plate simply because he can't represent us. So not only do we pay his very high fees, but now suddenly we're going to be paying somebody else's fees to do what he can't do. And I respect him when he says he can't do it, but I don't want to pay him and that person to get to the bottom. Now, I like the other guy's approach because I think he would really get in there and dig to help us. But I recognize Mr. Scroobies comes with a knowledge of years and years and years of history and experience. So I don't think we can afford him.
So, yeah, my 2 cents on the matter, I think both attorneys will serve at least 80% of what we need them for,
Yeah.
if not the full 100%. I'm not even going to get into the potential conflicts of interest. But for serving our purposes, I think we have to find, our job is to find the attorney that serves our purposes at the best price. That may not necessarily be the best attorney on the face of the planet, who probably didn't grace our room here tonight. He was probably one of the attorneys that didn't get back to you. But at $80 a lot per year as a difference between the price of the two attorneys, my vote's going to be for Hans Wall.
Are you calling for a vote?
Not at this time. I don't know if anyone else wanted to say anything.
Yeah.
But I think, Mark is definitely what I'll call a strategic thinker. Like his comment about, well, let's set up another municipal district to deal with drainage. You know, that's wonderful, but that doesn't affect us. And I agree, he's too expensive.
Well, I agree with Matt. Forget price for a second. I still, when I look at both of them, I agree with what Matt said. Is there any way that I'm looking at what he said about conflict of interest, and I didn't think about that before, and now I'm thinking about it. It is Hans Wall. And, but is there a way that we can use Mark Scrooby in the future for projects?
That was my thought too.
Let's hire, my position is hire Hans Wall, but he should know that we may be using Mark Scrooby as
That's not doing him right.
No.
well, I don't
Hire
know.
the guy as a
Well,
lawyer.
let me talk to him.
He needs to be.
I
wouldn't want to do him that way. You insult him.
This is like
I
making
think-
him
Agreed.
a
Yeah, this
You
is-
insult the guy. There's engineers and lawyers don't like to be insulted.
Engineers.
I'm just throwing this on the table. That's all.
Because, I mean, if you're giving him the project, you're giving him the project. You're not going to say, I'm giving him the project and then I'm going to let this other guy play. Unless he goes, you know what, I need some more help on this. Do you guys know anybody?
But you know what, that's
In
up
which
to
case?
him to say that.
Yeah.
Him, the
That
lawyer.
is up to him.
Yeah.
And it's also, if you look at the attorneys that's in his firm along with him, there's some other experience that if he really wanted to reach out to somebody, I'm sure they don't sit in their own little cubicles
No.
and not talk.
No, they
Correct.
So I would say that, you know, the likelihood that he'd be very happy to hear about us going out and getting somebody else to give us some opinion on something is probably not too good. But I think that what I read about all the attorneys in that group, there's enough broad experience to make us happy.
So
And
I
I like Mark, but
Yeah.
I can't afford him.
All right, any other comments, Janet?
No, I'm wrestling in my mind.
Matt,
You know,
any
just,
other comments? We're still in the discussion phase.
Right.
All right.
nope.
I'm finished.
Did I miss everybody over here?
Larry? Larry?
You go out on.
All right, I will make one comment, and it's to not say that I support this guy necessarily, but the only thing that I think we need to watch, and you guys pointed it out to me, you kind of made it. You're the reason I'm saying this. Is we have all this damn work to do, and we've got different people involved in it. And Mark in the last meeting said he was supposed to be involved in it. Well, I still don't think he was supposed to be. So I'm not changing that. But this guy has a lot of knowledge, and he can avoid you from going down rabbit trails that all you're doing is wasting time and money that Hans Wall may not be able to do. Now, he's got to go down a lot of rabbit trails to make up $37,000 a year.
That's right.
So,
I think you're.
but the other point I would make is that our critical time in this board is the next year, 1 year.
Now.
Yeah, because that's where we're making decisions about engineers and getting balls rolling and prioritizing and all these kind of things. And so if you need a sure-fledged, top-notch, seasoned lawyer and engineer, now's when you need it.
Well, and one of the things that did really strike a point was Ruby. It took him 2 seconds to just lay out the whole thing about what we have to do and when we have to do it. I mean, right from the planning on down. And that's the true mark of somebody that's done it before and can do it again. I'm sure the other guy has that in him, but he didn't bring it to the forefront.
Well, I've personally had some bad experience with HOAs too.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what a lot of his business is. And so if we take the approach that he takes on some HOAs and some of that, then that's not the road you want to go down.
He's strong though in permitting and procurement.
Yeah.
That came out really loud and clear for me.
It did, and in the end, he's not a member of the board. He doesn't get a vote.
Yeah.
That's us.
All right, any other discussion?
Yeah, I do have just a question that I thought when he went off, in my opinion, on a tangent talking about Clay County procurement. But we do our own procurement, do we not?
Yeah, we do.
So we
Yes.
don't have
But we have to follow the rules, huh?
No, not the county rules.
He started talking
We
about.
do hire an engineer, we gotta go to RFQ and all of that.
Well, that's standard.
Yeah, but we don't.
Okay, but it's not necessarily standard from his perspective.
I understand, we don't follow
We
the
don't
county rules.
have to go, we historically don't go to Clay County and
We
say.
have not. It was suggested a long time ago we adopt the rules, but we never did.
Okay, so it's plausible that we could.
Plausible.
If
We could adopt
if
the
it
rules.
makes sense, I'm just pointing out.
Yeah.
I sensed he went off on something that didn't
He did.
really apply to us.
Yeah. Well, he developed it, so the pride of development was there.
That came through
Yeah,
for sure.
can I ask you a question about what you just said? It's you're pointing out that our next 12 months are the most serious 12 months in the history of this board.
Well, maybe not, maybe we don't do anything and we'll be just like the rest of them.
But I don't want to be like the rest of them.
Well,
But
none of us
the
do.
point that I think that you might have been heading for is maybe in that year, we need somebody like Scrooby.
That was exactly my point, Carol, is is it worth $37,000 to have a top notch for that year?
And then after that, we move on to something that's less complicated.
But
Now,
would
I
anybody
wanna-
want us after that?
Why wouldn't they? If we didn't bring as many problems. Go ahead.
Would you, I mean, talking about doing someone wrong, yeah, we'd love to have you and your expertise for a year, but, you've served your purpose.
But aren't they
See you later.
contracts?
I don't,
Have we fixed this
The way
problem?
the write-up is, it's a one-year deal, and you can get rid of it at
That's
any
right.
time. You don't even have to satisfy the year.
It's not-
They can
we're
get
not
rid of
getting
us
rid
at
of it.
any time.
See, I think it's a 2-year period. But anyway, we're not gonna argue about that.
You mean
at
the
all.
important
It's still
phase?
strong, I mean, Alton's right on. 12 months, but we have another 12 months on top of it. That's immaterial right now. Let's go back to what we're talking about. I don't think we can hire, I don't know. I just is back in my head going like this.
I don't think
if
we
he
can
goes
hire
to the
what?
county and talks to the county, he's representing us, they're gonna say, that's what you guys wanna do, but I think maybe this is what you should do. And he would lean towards the county.
Oh, I think
Well,
that.
Or he'd conflict himself right out of the conversation, off the start.
I don't think
Nothing
so.
against, they're both well qualified.
Absolutely.
Well, he did say one statement in this conversation that I'd be darned if I would have said it. I admire him for saying it though, and that's that maybe you don't need me.
Yes.
You know, he made that statement.
Yes, he
Yes,
did.
it did.
And so,
Well, and
you
it
know,
was-
that gives him an out too. I mean, he didn't say, I'm not interested in your deal, but he did say,
But he
maybe you
did
don't
say
need me.
that, and it was in direct response to a question I asked him that
It
said, you
was.
know,
I noticed it.
who are you
noticed
gonna be on? But, and I honestly think he told us the truth at that very moment.
Well,
We're
and then-
peanuts compared to where he's at.
I think so too. And he's, you know, somebody asked how old he is. He graduated in 79, so he's about 65.
He's a young guy.
Before he went to
Younger
college.
than I am.
You know, the other thing that I picked up with him is
No, you're not.
he has so much to do with how he looked like that like I complained about some of the things he was directly involved with.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So
But you know, and that was my point about that though, is that he probably knows if you give him a list of all the things that the different committees around have been working on, he probably knows which ones you stand a good chance of doing something about and which ones you might as well forget it.
Yep, I don't
I don't
disagree.
But then again, if you don't try, nothing, you never gain anything. So.
I think we need some fresh blood.
I go back to what Mark said at the beginning, you know, we just need a lawyer to keep us between the rails.
Yeah, okay. So any more discussion?
I'd like to make a motion.
What's a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the board retain Hans Wall as our attorney.
Well, all we're gonna do, I said before, the way procedurally we're gonna do it, we're gonna vote on it. We're gonna vote